So today we've got verses 26, 27, and 28 lined up. But unfortunately, I forgot to record last time. So the recap I will do of verses 23, 24, and 25. So, okay, now let us look at this, what verse number 23 was saying. 23 said that those people who, or devotees, who endowed with Shraddha, worship other gods. That means not that one Brahman that we have, that the chapter is talking about, or what Krishna, or the level from which Krishna is talking, but the lesser gods. And we had talked about gods in nature, other demigods, your senses. So even if they worship me, those gods, they are actually worship me, O Kaunteya. And the worship to these lesser gods is actually contrary to the traditional practice. So, and this is because our scriptures also propose that there is only one God. Okay. And the thing is that when we are satisfying a particular God, say we are doing something for Lord Indra, or we are doing something for our senses, because these gods or senses or whatever are the lesser gods, or a tree, if you may be nature worship, they are also actually enlivened by that Brahman alone. So when we are worshipping to a lesser god, we are by the law of transitivity, actually worshipping that Brahman itself. Then Krishna goes on to verse number 24, that I am indeed the enjoyer and also the Lord of all yajna, sacrifices. But they meaning the devotees, do not know me in reality, hence they fall. Okay. And here we had recapped the word yajna was important because this goes back to, chapters 3 and 4, the basic chapters where we were actually talking about the karma yoga and the jnana karma sannyas yoga, or the, yoga of action and the yoga of renunciation of action in wisdom. So there we had seen that only the human beings have this capacity to perform a yajna or sacrifice. Okay. And therefore, this is very, very important. And once we do a yajna to satisfy any particular god or that supreme reality, that is our capacity. And that is what makes us different from other beings in the universe. And also the second thing that differentiates us from other beings is that we have a choice. At any point of time, we have a choice to do one thing or to do another. We have the choice to attend this session, or we have the choice to go and attend a wedding or go to a shopping mall or whatever. So we are the only people. The rest of the nature functions as if it were programmed. So that is one thing that we had covered in detail. And then the verse is important because they say that they do not know me in reality, hence they fall. Fall meaning that they come within the realm of birth and death. Okay. And they do not know me in reality. Why they don't know me in reality? Because if they knew me in reality, they would worship me instead of the other lesser gods. And the law of karma says that we get what we seek. So, because we are seeking the lesser gods, because of our ignorance, so we are getting the smaller gods, or we are going on the path of the Dakshinayan, which we had talked about in chapter, earlier on in this chapter, actually. Right? So this is one. And therefore, the verse 24 was prompting us to think of why we are thinking of a lesser idol or a lesser goal when the ultimate goal is also available to us. So that was verse 24. Verse 25, translated to worshippers of devas go to devas, worshippers of ancestors go to ancestors, worshippers of elements go to elements, and those who worship me come to me. Me meaning Krishna is talking from the level of pure consciousness. That means he is identified with that Brahman when he is talking to Arjun at this particular point of time. So what he said, this is again reinforcing that law of karma, that if you're worshipping the demigods, you will attain them. If you are worshipping the ancestors, you will attain the ancestors. If you are worshipping the elements or the bhoot, actually the verse used the term bhoot. Okay, so that means the elements. Then you will go to those elements. Elements, again, rider here, please don't identify bhoot with demons or spirits and all. No, bhoot means something that exists. So it relates to the 5 elements, the Panch Mahabhut, that's why they're called the 5 great that exist. And the rest of the bhoot or whatever exists is drawn out of those Panch Mahabhut. They are the cause of the rest of the, the physical manifestation. So those people who worship the elements go to the elements. Essentially, it means that if you are worshipping the ancient civilizations, that is the knowledge you'll get. If you're worshipping the demigods, that is what you'll get. If you're worshipping the nature, something which is very similar to what scientists do, that is the field in which you will attain success. So that is what it's saying. And the last bit says that those people who worship me, or those devotees who worship me, will reach me, or they will merge with me, or they are on the path of no return, the Devayan path. Okay. So this was there till verse number 25. If you have any questions, you can ask now, or if you want, we can park it for later. How would you prefer? Okay. So I'm assuming we'll park it for later. So let's start with verse number 26 today. 26 of chapter, verse number 26 of chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita. So I will chant. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktaya prayachati tadaham bhaktayupahiritam ashnami prayatmana. The verse translates to: whosoever with devotion offers me, that Supreme God, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, water, that devout offering of the pure-hearted, striving being, I accept. I is the God. Okay, let's take this up word by word. This verse is fairly simple to translate. Patram is a leaf. Patra is a leaf. Pushpam, flower. Phalam, fruit. Toyam is water. Yo, those who, may, to me. Bhaktaya is with bhakti, so with devotion. Prayachati, offer. Tat, that. Aham, I. Bhaktyu prahatam, devout offering. Ashnami, eat or accept or partake. Prayatmana is a striving, pure-hearted soul. So actually, I will take up this word in detail during the discussion. So essentially, the verse translates to: whosoever with devotion offers me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, water, that devout offering of the pure-hearted, striving being, I accept. So let's chant it together. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktaya prayachati tadham bhaktayo bharatam ashnami prayatmana. So me, again, I would like to specify is that Krishna is speaking from the level of the pure consciousness and not from the level of the personality that we relate to, or Arjun might be relating to at the point of the discourse, right? So Krishna, when he's talking of himself as Brahman, that means he is talking of someone who is merged with that Brahman. And when any of the great sages talk to us like that, this is what it means. So you will find the same kind of a tone in the Guru Nanak Sahib, or with the Guru Nanak, in the Bible, so on and so forth. Many scriptures, at that point of time, that person has identified and is speaking from the level of the pure consciousness. So that is what we are talking. The previous verse, which we just recapped, said, established the law of karma, that the worshipper invariably goes to the object of his worship. So if the object of the worship is that Brahman, the worshipper will reach that Brahman. We also covered that the same discipline, the process is the same, okay? That you have to pitch the goal and work consistently and constantly towards that goal. So the same effort or the same discipline is required for both the, anything lesser and for the higher. So the same discipline and devotion is needed for the worship of smaller, limited goals or smaller dev, and the same thing is required for the Supreme God. So why should we waste our effort on the lower ideals, and instead why should we not focus on that supreme reality, knowing which we will become one with that reality? So that is what we had covered till last verse. Now the question arises, how do we invoke, or what do we offer? How do we invoke that Lord, that Supreme Lord, So see, it is very easy to invoke the lesser gods. So for example, we all do the Navaratras. So that is the 9 days of the Devi Ji when we fast. And so that's a ritual. So you're invoking Devi Ma during those 9 days. Coming to still lesser gods, so if it's someone you really love or respect, or, you want to invoke, so you buy them gifts, and they're very easy to invoke. These rituals. And, you can give them something which you want to give, and maybe they don't have. So that is one way of invoking. So it is easy to invoke the lesser gods. The problem is that when we are trying to invoke that Brahman, who's the Lord of everything, what do we offer him? Because whatever I offer, or whoever, whatever I'm offering to that Brahman is his. So what do I offer him? And therefore, Krishna in this verse is bringing out the very easy nature of worshipping that supreme reality. No elaborate sacrifices, offerings, charities, rituals, etc. are required. The items that I mentioned, a leaf, if you can offer a leaf, you offer a leaf. A flower, if you want. Fruit, if you want to give. And if you have none of this, even a drop of water or a spoonful of water is enough to please the Brahman. Now, see, we go through many, when we go to a temple, for example, a Hindu temple, normally you take flowers for the deity. If you're going to the church, you light a candle there. And even the candles are the smallest, thinnest candles that we offer, actually. And in case you're going to a Buddhist temple, you offer incense. So that is the way you're offering. Okay. What does God have to do with this? And if you go to a dargah, you offer a chadar, right? Now the thing is that, does God really, any of the demigods or the God, do they need all this? Right? That is one thing. What normally happens to it, it all comes back to the shop again, outside, whatever remains. So anyway, that is immaterial. Whatever we are offering is trivial, actually. It is inconsequential. And secondly, which is the crux of the matter, is it's gods in any case. So the point is, what we give is irrelevant. It is the attitude with which that we give. That is the relevant part. So how we give is of paramount importance, and what we give is irrelevant. So now the words that are coming in the verse, the first verse, first word is in the first line, bhaktaya, is, which means with devotion. So that is the key word. Then the second word is the last one, prayat manaha, prayat atmanaha, actually. So it is a combination of two words, prayatn, atma. So a person who is identifying with the pure consciousness, that is an atmana, and prayatn is someone who is working or putting in effort towards that state. So the word means that person should be without motive or having a pure heart and putting in the requisite effort towards that goal, or Brahman in this case. So these are the two key attributes with which the offering is accepted by the Lord. So first thing is that it should be given with devotion. And secondly, the person should be with a pure heart or a pure mind and putting in effort in the requisite direction or for the requisite goal. Not only for Brahman. Actually, even for your worldly gains, this is very, very true. So a student who wants to pass an examination can pray to the Lord all that he wants to, Lord, help me through with this exam. But at the end of the day, he also has to put in effort to study that subject. Only then can he answer the paper, no? So both the things are required, devotion or dedication to the subject and putting in, or the Lord, and effort in that direction. Okay. So both the things are required. The other positive part of this verse or interpretation of this verse is that even the humblest and an ignorant person is capable of receiving God's grace through devotion and purity of heart. And I think our scriptures point out to n number of such cases. Shabri, can you think of other people in your scriptures? Kevat, people who were illiterate, but they had the God's grace because what they did was with devotion. And Shabri is also an example of where she was offering fruits to the Lord. Phalam is one of the words that we are using here, where those were being offered and those also half eaten. Because you see, what was the attitude with which she was giving? She wanted to ensure that the Lord or Sri Ram is not being offered a bitter fruit. So she was tasting it and then offering it to the Lord. So, and the Lord was eating it with love because he was seeing the devotion with which it was being offered. So the positive import of this verse is that the humblest and the most ignorant person is also capable of receiving God's grace, provided that devotion, effort, and pure mind, a pure heart is maintained by the person. On the other hand, if we are rich, powerful, we may not get it if we are arrogant and self-indulgent. So that is something that we should keep in mind. And we should ensure that we move towards purity, because it is a pure person alone who can be happy and hence fearless. And the Lord accepts the devout offering of a striving. Striving means a person who's putting in effort, pure-hearted seeker. Let's move on to verse number 27. Yad karoshi yad shannasi yajuhoshi dadasi yad. Yat pasyasi kaunteya tat kurushav madararpanam. So the verse says that whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give, whatever austerity you practice, O Kaunteya, do that as an offering to me. Okay. So let's take this up word by word. Yat means whatever or what. Okay. So yat, what? Karoshi is what you do. Yat annasi, sorry, is grain. So annasi is what you eat. So yat annasi is what you eat. Yat juhoshi is what you offer. Dadasi is what dena, what you give. Yat comes afterwards in that. So what you give. Then what? Tapasya, whatever austerity you practice. O Kaunteya, that's a name for Arjun, Kunti Putra. Tat, that. Kurushav, you do. Madarpanam, offering to me. So so the verse translates to whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give, whatever austerity you practice, O Kaunteya, do that as an offering to me. Let's chant it together. Yat karoshi yad shannasi yajuhoshi dadasi yat pasyasi kaunteya tat purusha madarpanam. So in the last verse, we just saw that devotion, effort, and purity is required to reach God. Right? This verse is laying the blueprint for the devotional part of the approach to God. Okay. Now, see, the things that are mentioned, the verse is mentioning is whatever you do, and what you don't do is implied. So whatever you're doing, some set of activities you're doing, some set of activities you're not doing. So whatever you do or not do, whatever you eat or consume or not consume, okay, whatever you offer, whatever you give, so on and so forth. So whatever you are doing, do that as an offering to me. That means with the devotion, think that you're doing it for me. Okay. And consumption, please always remember, it does not only mean food. It is what our senses are consuming. So the sights we are seeing, the sounds we're hearing, everything. So whatever we are consuming. So if we think of whatever we are doing, the list is actually listing out all the human activities that we do. We continue to think of the Lord in that and do it as an offering to the Lord. We will actually translate our limited time worship to a 24/7 worship. And we will be in constant remembrance of the Lord. And this is how we will maintain a constant and unswavering thought of the self and direct all our physical, mental, and intellectual activities towards attaining Him, or always thinking of Him. And ultimately, we will reach that goal that we all should be having, that of self-realization. Now, see, in practice, why this becomes difficult is, and it is a key point actually, and we must realize, we separate our worship or our prayer time from our life. In the sense, when we look at our daily activity, we say that, okay, this is my puja time, right? After doing that puja, whatever is the duration, it doesn't matter. We come back to the world with a vengeance and pretty much do what we want to do, So yell at our staff or our employees and whatever. We may have right ways of doing it. We may have wrong ways, but we have lost the contact with the Lord. So mostly or very often we separate devotion from our daily lives. Prayers or worship, we think, has to be done in a specified time frame. So, or so every Tuesday I go to Hanuman Mandir and I do worship Hanumanji. Every Friday, I'm covering all religions, so every Friday I do the namaz. Every Sunday I go to the church. That's the time when I think of the Lord. That's the time when I contact him. I maintain, or it can be a period, so I keep rosas during the rosa time, so I fast, or I don't have non-vegetarian food during the Navaratris. So these are specific period that we are channelizing or worshipping or thinking of a deity or a god. The problem is, and the rest of the time we are not. I mean, so Navaratras get over and lo behold, I think the chicken, poor things, would be shivering, now comes my day when I'm killed out, right? So but the point is that the devotion is to be engaged at every moment of our life, and not during these specified times that I go to the mandir every Tuesday and Saturday. I go to Hanuman Mandir, I worship in front of the Lord. That's it. After that, it's over. No, we have to do it in all our waking moments, and we have to remember that. And here I would like to quote one of Kabir's dohas, and I'm doing it in Hindi. So Kabir has said, "Jahan jahan jaun, soi parikrama." Parikrama, is when we, take a rotation or rotate around that particular building, which is of a pious, it could be a temple or anything. So Kabir says, "Jahan jahan jaun, soi parikrama, jo kuch karun, so seva. Jab soum karun dandvat, janu dev na duja." So what he's saying is, wherever I go, I'm doing Lord's parikrama. Whatever I'm doing it as a seva to him. Whenever I'm sleeping, it's like a dandvat to that Lord. I know this Lord and no other Lord. So this is one of Kabir's famous dohas. So what we have to relate to is that instead of practicing yoga with limited goals, so we do karma yoga for material gains, bhakti yoga for getting mental peace, Gyan yoga for intellectual satisfaction. So these are very, very limited goals that we have set. Instead of in and through these, we should aim actually at attaining the self within us by dedicating whatever we are doing to that Paramatman or Brahman. With that, let's move on to the next verse. The last verse for the day. Shubha shubham phalerevam mokshase karma bandhane sannyasa yoga yuktatma vimukto mam pashyasi. In this manner, you shall be freed from the bonds of action bearing good and evil results. Seeking union by sannyas yoga, or the yoga of renunciation, liberated, you shall come to me. Let's take this up word by word. So Shubh is what is good. Ashubh is bad or evil. Phale is fruit or result. So Shubha Shubhe Phale means from good and evil results. Evam, thus, therefore, or in this manner. Moksha se, you will be liberated, freed. Mukti milegi aapko. Karma bandhane, karma is action, bandhan is bond. Karma bandhane becomes from bonds of action. Sannyas yog yukta atma. So seeking union by the process of sannyas yoga or yoga of renunciation. Vimukta is liberated. Mam me upashyasi, you shall come. So thus you shall be freed, or in this manner you will be freed from the bonds of action bearing good and evil results. Seeking union by sannyas yoga, liberated you shall come to me. So let's chant it together and we shall discuss this. Shubha Shubha Phalerevam Mokshase Karma Bandhane Sannyasa Yoga Yuktatma Vimukto Peshyasi. So I'm just linking the verses again. Devotion and effort required to go towards God was emphasized in verse number 26. 27 just covered the devotional aspect. This verse now is covering the last part of that, which is the effort required. Okay. So actions which are with motive, and that is where the pure-heartedness also comes in. So when you're pure-hearted, it is when you're without a motive. So you see, very simply, if you observe in the world, when you are interacting with individuals, you find children or babies very, very attractive because they are without a motive. They don't expect anything from you. It's only when we get conditioned into the ways of the world that we start having motives that, so every interaction of mine should yield some kind of a result, so we become very result oriented, that if I'm spending time with you, this should be the output of that, So we find children attractive because they are without a motive. They don't expect anything from us. So actions without motive do not taint us. This we have been reading, earlier on in the thing, and I'm going to link up all the chapters in this with this verse. It is the actions with motive, or where we are expecting something in return, or we are doing it for a particular result. They are the ones that bind us. And what happens is, as the verse is saying, the good actions will yield good results, and bad actions will result in bad results, right? This is the law of karma. You sow what you reap. So there's really, it's a complete no-brainer here. You all know this, that if I plant a mango seed and I'm waiting for jackfruits to come out of that tree, then it's not a problem of the tree. It's my problem. I'm stupid that I've planted a mango seed and expecting jackfruits from the tree which comes out. Now, so law of karma, we know that what we sow is what we reap. The point is that the results, these fruits of our actions, are what are binding us. And it is when we do the correct action, or the dharmic action, or the action which our conscience is allowing, and we forget about the results, whether good or bad, then we will reach the self, or we will become liberated from the residual effects of our action or the bonds of action. Right? And see, also I would like to take up this word which comes, the first word of the second line, sannyas yoga. Sannyas is renunciation, and yoga is union. So the word sannyas yoga is actually translated to union of renunciation, or union with renunciation. So it's a composite word, out of which the first word, sannyas, means renunciation, and yoga means union. So what are we saying? Get attached to detachment, which in itself is contradictory. Now, why? Because you are talking of renunciation, then why are you talking of union? Why are you talking of attachment? Right? The point is that it actually is bringing out again a fundamental law of life, that detachment to anything is not possible without attachment. Okay. So what we have to do is gradually we have to keep giving up the lower goals in our life or the lower values in our life and keep pitching on to higher values. And in the previous earlier verses, we have done that what the Vedas prescribe is that the only desire which is acceptable is the desire for attaining the Brahman, right? So what we are saying is that you gradually, whatever level you are at, you start pitching slightly higher goal for yourself. So renunciation is actually not giving up, but of taking something higher. That is what we have to understand as the meaning of the word renunciation. And this is something that we had done as far back as chapter 3 or the Karma Yoga chapter, which taught us the technique of right action, where we had said that once you become mature, you automatically outgrow the immature things. So it's like the toddler is attached to a particular rattle and you try to take out the rattle from that toddler's hand. The toddler will grip it more strongly. You know, it's impossible to get it out of its tiny grasp. But as the toddler grows, the rattle automatically is lying in some corner of the house. No one, definitely not the child, is looking at it. It's only you when you go around to clean up that you find that, oh, this is also lying there. So it gives way, that rattle gives way to toys, which as the child grows, maybe tricycles, then, bicycles, and maybe an attitude as the child grows into a teenager. And the same thing is happening at the schooling level. So the preschool gives way to school, to college, etc., and so on and so forth. So we automatically, with maturity, we automatically give up the low value items and start pursuing the high value items, right? So, even if in your wardrobe, if you have different things, and if you were to discard, when you feel that, you bought enough, what you do? Things which you don't need or which you have outgrown, in the sense, you have better stuff, you discard those items, right? So automatically you outgrow those outfits. It's like climbing a ladder. To go up, you have to fix your foot firmly on the upper rung of the ladder and then release the foot from the lower rung of the ladder and take that to the next level. That's exactly the process that we have to follow with our mind and intellect. Now, higher values, as we have just said, imply maturity. And once we become mature, the lower things automatically fall by themselves. And it's also a question of time and patience, you see. So like when I am waiting for the plant to give me a fruit, first the flower will come out. The flower will mature, shed its petals, and then turn into a fruit. Now, if I'm in a hurry and I pluck the flower and wait for it to become a fruit, that's not going to happen. I mean, so I have to wait. I have to wait patiently, let the flower give way to the fruit. So that detachment is not possible. Similarly, in the similar manner, is not possible without, firstly, it'll take time and it'll drop by itself. You cannot force it out. Just like that rattle in the toddler's hand, you will outgrow it. If if you take it out of your system, you will actually, that attraction that the thing has, or that desire, whatever, power, wealth, that attraction will always be there and you are just actually suppressing it. So you will have, it'll come out with a vengeance at some point in time. The important part is that we have to let it subside. It should not matter to us. So we need to outgrow that particular desire or vasana. And it is knowledge which gives us the maturity or the power to outgrow. And see, if you see the Bhagavad Gita, we are at chapter 9. From the beginning, we don't do chapter 1, which is Arjun's despondency. chapter number 2 was the Sankhya Yoga, where actually the entire Bhagavad Gita is over in that chapter. Entire knowledge is over. But Arjun did not understand. So chapter 3 onwards, the actual text starts with the Karma Yoga chapter. So Krishna is telling Arjun to get up and start fighting the war for which he has been preparing for the last 13, 14 years. So you see what the flow of the chapters then goes on like this, that in chapter 3 we did Karma Yoga, which taught us the technique of right action. And Krishna tells Arjun that it's an ignorant person who acts attached to the action. The wise one actually functions unattached to action and wishes for the welfare of the world. That means sets up a higher ideal for themselves. Then chapter 4 we did was Gyan Karma Sannyas Yoga, and mostly we've been actually going back and forth from this chapter to back to those verses. Some of the verses I've been quoting. The Gyan Karma Sannyas Yoga actually talks about the 12 yajanas, in which we convert all actions of our body into a prayer form. And actually, that is what was also said in the previous verse, where all activities are converted into a form of devotion. Okay. And then what happens is, once we have shed our vasanas, we start developing a dispassion for the world, okay, which was covered in chapter number 5, Karma Sannyas Yoga. So how we shed our vasanas and we start developing a dispassion for the world. And then we are capable of entering into meditation, which was chapter number 6, Dhyan. So very often a lot
No, we can't hear you. Okay. Now I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So you get rid of your extra desires, the extra baggage that you're carrying. Shed it off so that you have just the basic. It's like the rocket which is leaving the Earth's orbit. So it needs a certain velocity to get out of firstly the first field of layer of the atmosphere, move to the first layer of the atmosphere. After that, it keeps shedding itself and just contains the basic payload which is required for it to get into space. Rest of it is all discarded. That's exactly the way we have to function. Just take the basic self of us so that we are able to reach the self. So it's like the child, we will outgrow the world. And we will be able to liberate ourselves from the worldly existence. Get attached to Brahman, and detachment to the world will automatically happen. So what we are saying, and what the verse is saying, is that by surrendering all actions to the God, we are liberated from karma, and we will obtain the grace of God's grace. And none of the actions will taint us. They will not stick to us. They will not bind us. They will not, have us develop more vasanas and more desires, which will bring us back to the cycle of birth and death. So once that state happens, we will become one with the Brahman. So with that, we will close today's session.